Hi, listeners. Thanks for joining in. Welcome to another HRO Today educational podcast. In this series, we aim to provide you the latest workforce management approaches and best practices in HR. I'm Debbie Bolla, Vice President and Editorial Director of HRO Today magazine. HR and TA leaders understand the value of engaging with an RPO partner in order to find, attract, and attain today's top talent. Recent research confirms that RPO programs can bring scalability, quality, and engagement to a company's talent strategy. In fact, Nelson Hall reports that RPO can decrease costs between 20 and 50%, improve time to hire rates between 10 and 33%, and increase candidate engagement by 17%. So how can organizations make the most from their engagements? Where does risk lie and how can they mitigate it? Today, I have an expert here with me who will offer some insight. Cory Kruse is president of Orion Talent. Orion Talent helps people find meaningful careers and businesses grow by finding, delivering, and engaging the best talent around the world. Its expert team will manage the people, process, talent, platform, and strategy to boost hiring performance. Cory, thanks so much for joining me today. Where does risk arise in an RPO partnership?
Multiple areas of opportunity for risk. And so if you take it back to the why does it happen or how does it happen, it's typically a gap between expectations and reality, which we call disappointment. That could arise in many different areas. It could be discrepancies in levels of service. It could be an issue in communication. It could be a cultural or behavioral issue specific to relationships within an organization. Is it a competitive relationship? Is it cooperative, collaborative? Issues arise from compliance. There's things that if you're not managing process right and hacking your way through it or shortcutting, could be compliance issues. A lot of times when data points are not managed and understood, and by the way, data points come from multiple disparate systems, then if they're not managed correctly and people interpret the data differently or everybody's not on the same page, you're going to have discrepancies and disappointments. Changing of the guard is always one of the first and foremost. So when you're managing an engagement, if somebody new comes in and has a different set of ideals or different relationships, that could create some risk and doubt, not only in the relationship between the client and the RPO provider, but also amongst the teams. So an internal client team of HR professionals could get wind of a new leader, and then all of a sudden they're mentally off to some sort of change or another ideas before we've even operated in complete performance and hit all of our numbers in the current program. So changing of the guard's a big one. Again, it comes back to if the basis for the relationship didn't get set up right and was not in agreement at the beginning, your potential for risk is much higher.
So, Cory, what are some steps you can take to mitigate that risk?
First and foremost, it's getting it set up right and to be in agreement. And this starts from the initial touch, whether that be through a relationship or through the sales process or through the assessment and vetting process. Getting it right out of the gate is critical. Some of the components of that is obviously having a sound, proven implementation methodology, which includes change management, creating urgency around the program and how you're going to communicate it out and what the desired outcomes are beyond just general KPIs. And those KPIs are typically quantitative and qualitative, like time to fill. We need these jobs filled in 30 days or less. We want our submit to hire ratios to be 3-to-1. These are standard KPIs that people measure, but also creating cornerstones beyond the KPIs. A cornerstone would be an absolute on how we work together, how we communicate, what we do in certain instances, a risk mitigation plan, and being able for the provider to be able to see problems and opportunities as they appear through the customer's eyes, and for us as an RPO provider to ensure that we stay within our client's operational reality. Relationships are very dynamic and they could change. Calibrating your relationships often, both ways, and communicating those out and getting validation from your customer is critical. In an RPO, we're one of three things here in the relationship matrix, as we call it. We're either a subordinate vendor, we're a trusted advisor, or we're truly a strategic partner. Measuring that, striving to move the needle north on that is key as well. Listening, customers will tell you what they want and need every day, and it's whether or not we choose to recognize what we would call signals and respond appropriately to that. And this is an interesting dynamic, and we've seen it, over the years. I've been doing this for a long time and have been through engagements where we were hitting every metric, blowing them out of the water. But there were some areas within the relationship matrix that we failed to recognize, and they got sideways, and we ended up parting ways. And I've been on the other side of that too, where our relationships are as strong as they can be. We're doing what we say, saying what we do, but we're not hitting our numbers. But we've developed such a high level of trust and a level of confidence within our customers' population that we work through it together. So there are multiple data points when you're operating an RPO, and it's how an organization manages those data points, which come from multiple systems, email, tools, collaboration platforms, face-to-face conversations, Zoom calls, training sessions. There's data points there that we need to listen for and we need to respond to appropriately.
So can you share some SLAs or KPIs that you would recommend?
Absolutely. There's quantitative and qualitative. To give you an example of it, when we look at quantitative, that would be time to hire, time to process, time to onboard, things of that nature. Obviously, the time's probably shorter for non-exempt versus exempt, or specialty hires typically require more time. There's ratios, so that would be how efficient are we in sourcing. So there's, pipeline ratio numbers, there is conversion ratio numbers, and these numbers should be mutually agreed upon. There should be a starting point, but they could be unique depending on the customer's challenge, the geographies, the labor pressure in certain markets, the ability for a customer to digest new employees, for example. How fast can we get them onboarded and productive? A lot of those are standard metrics. Other metrics to track that are key to running a healthy RPO engagement would be things that a lot of folks may not think about, and that is, how are we doing when it comes to strategic plans? So we see ourselves as beyond a vendor. We see ourselves as trusted advisors and strategic partners, which obviously drives us to be working on things, whether it's things on the front end, like creating a stellar branding program and employee value proposition, and making sure that that gets communicated effectively and measured effectively out to the market. So you could apply marketing metrics just as you would with a sales environment where you have conversion ratios that can be very simply applied to your sourcing strategy and efforts. You can apply a quality metric to that. So based on how many people we have in our pipeline, how many people are moving into interview or engagement, and then ultimately assessment and hire, is a quality component that can be measured. And then the other areas that we look at as well is measuring relationships. That can be simply measured two ways. We will measure them, and then we'll share them with our customer, and we work with our customers to employ different methods of improving relationships along the way, because as we know, this is very much a relationship business, and we want to be recognized for our value. Value to us equals the benefits that we deliver minus the cost. And the customer has to agree on that, and we have to agree that we're going to deliver a certain amount of value. So everything that we do aligns to that value component.
Definitely. Now, Cory, you've covered a lot of ground here today. Are there any other factors that lead to better results?
There are. Going back to the basis for the relationship and the implementation, I think it's very important that everybody involved in implementation be well-versed in some sort of change management methodology. It is very much a key component, and it should be addressed at all levels of the program. And what this does, it creates urgency, it creates the vision for change, it removes barriers or those things which stand in the way. If done right, we can create some micro wins around the change that we're doing and keep building on the program through the change. And it should ultimately become part of the engagement and part of the culture, talking about it, recognizing opportunities within it, and really be sewn into the ideals of change within the relationship. So, Debbie, as you know, talent acquisition changes. The candidate pools change, the economy changes, certain geographies become hot and cold, and so there's moving targets a lot of times. For us as a provider, we have to be able to manage change in concert with our customers in order to be successful. It is absolutely critical that we align the right level of talent with the task at hand. And to give you an example of that, we've run into numerous times companies that have gone outside, hired a vendor, I would call them, for very low cost, and that had quickly failed within the first 6 months, miserably failed. And we quickly looked at what were the components of failure. Well, you can't have a $50,000 a year recruiter with 6 months experience recruiting $150,000 to $200,000 complex engineers. That typically doesn't align. A junior person can apply value through the value chain and sourcing and other things, but really is critical to align the right level of talent, especially when it comes to delivering and managing the project. One other thought, it is critical to ensure that we as RPO providers and that the client as the buyer have identified champions and or facilitators within the organization with the right profile and experience of managing a partner, being able to work through risk mitigation, be able to work through problem resolution, be able to align with your strategic goals as a company, and really be a driver from within the client of those things.
Champions of partnership leads to success. That's great advice, Cory. Thanks so much for joining me today. Until next time, listeners, I'm Debbie Bolla.